Thank you all for joining us today. You've all been supporters of Inside India's Best Known Companies. And in this series, we're looking at India's most global companies and companies that are most innovative. It's a great time to talk about this because the last 3 years, the volatility has shown that some of the most aggressive companies in India have gone global like never before. There's been a push towards the globalization agenda. And of course, innovation has been the key in a marketplace like this. Let me start the conversation with you, Mr. Godrej. This is a volatile environment. VUCA is a word that you often use now because it brings together volatility, uncertainty, and all the challenges that doing business in India or anywhere brings together. Has this period over the last 4 years made the resolve towards these two even more stronger than before?
Well, I think globalization is a reality. And because of globalization, I think the world is doing well. The global economy has benefited from globalization. And Indian companies have particularly been successful in globalizing over the last 10 years, I would say, because of the innovations which we have developed in India have global applications. And so Indian companies have been successfully been able to take their innovative ideas, whether it's in business processes, whether it's in product, whether it's in services, successful globally. And I think Indian companies have benefited through the globalization that has taken place.
Dr. Sharma, what comes to your mind when you talk about innovation or globalization in the current context? How are these two, pharmaceutical industry was created because of the innovation that Indian companies did when the regime changed. How has the definition changed lately?
Yeah, so I think taking from where Mr. Godrej left, I think there has been a combination of factors, which has converged together to make innovation an imperative actually. And it's no more a choice. It has become imperative that you innovate if you want to survive and thrive. And I would say that it's globalization because it means not only you play in the field, but there are so many other people who can play in the field from elsewhere. There is this whole digital revolution where information is so easily available on tap, and therefore awareness and tastes and preferences, they're getting global. People are aware of what they want, what they're looking for. Then there is this whole world of what we've been reading for last 15 years, flat world, And the ease of entry into businesses, I think, if you look at all these 4 factors converging together, the only answer that one can find for oneself is innovation. Having said that, I think the first phase of globalization for Indian companies has actually come out more out of cost leadership, because if you look at the 3 elements of strategy, differentiation, cost leadership, and focus on customer. The first phase, including pharmaceutical companies, I think, yes, we innovated on processes. So process research has been very strong in India, and therefore we could attain cost leadership. But our forays into America or Japan or Europe have been more because of our cost leadership and not so much about from our differentiation platform. And to take it just a step ahead, I think that phase is now getting mature, and the next phase of now getting differentiated is being demanded. Whether you address it or not is a different point.
That's a good point to take off from Mr. Venkat. Cost leadership is one aspect that takes you so far. But when you are in a global marketplace, how do you differentiate, and what has your experience been?
Well, let's take process plant equipment. At the high end, not the very high end where there are just 4 or 5 international companies qualified, of which, let's say, our company is one of them. So the major issue there is, along with cost leadership, which is a very important part, is your ability to give quick deliveries, and also these are all customized as to how easy you are to accept some changes or some flexibility in the customer side, which I think as Indians, we work 7 days a week, we work all the time when they're all sleeping. So we are able to sort of make up for some of these changes where other people are more rigid. So I think cost leadership, quality, I think these are two very important parts in delivering on time.
Avinash, Mr. Godrej spoke about the fact that innovations by Indian companies made the globalization journey early. But I will flip that question upside down and say, has globalization also induced a wave of innovation?
I think if you look at globalization, Mr. Godrej is absolutely right. In terms of the services globalization, I think India has been a great innovator, if you look at it. I mean, in terms of what do you do with the process and how do you apply the best intellect on business problems of clients has been amazing in that. But I think if you were to look at globalization, what it has done is the innovation that you typically hear about, for example, in the Valley, and there are certain other parts of the world the innovation has been done. I think globalization has made that innovation available to all of us. And today what's happening in terms of the digital, in my view, is an absolute leveler in that sense. It levels the playing field significantly. And what you are seeing is it's not just the countries or places which are doing the innovation itself. It is also making an impact on the size of the companies itself. I mean, you talked about the fact that it's not the big companies. The innovation right now in the digital era is coming in from small companies. And I think it's very, very important for companies like us to be able to forge partnership, help build infrastructure, externally and within our own companies, to be able to partner with these smaller companies, because this is where the innovation is going to come from.
Yeah, I think to add to this, his point, the latest trend in industry has been to have a venture capital fund within the organization. And there are large corporations, American corporations, and I think some of us in India have been thinking about it, to appoint a vice president or whatever you call him, a head of VC, and you give him $100 million or $50 million and let him or her scout around for opportunities around, and incubate opportunities, in various clusters of technology. So you have cluster in California, in East America, you have in Sweden, you have in Australia, you have in Germany. And you look at these clusters and there are companies who are doing it, at least in pharma world I know. Pfizer has a venture capital vice president, a lady who heads the thing. She has a $100 million corpus to invest.
Wow.
So to your point, to aid innovation, and that you don't become victim of your large size within, you have started taking into recourse into venture capital, where you are then tapping into the innovation of these small boutique firms and putting it together.
Disruptors can also be very, very stiff competition.
Allow each team to a budget so that they can experiment with it. And then you will be able to disrupt the potential competitive disruption.
Disruptors can also be very, very stiff competition, Mr. Godrej, because the barriers of entry are slowly getting reduced. And for incumbents, how critical is it then to be really thinking like a disruptor and not just reacting?
Oh, absolutely, because as you rightly said, barriers of entry have come down. Smaller companies, in fact, sometimes work out better than larger companies. So you have to expect that kind of competition. And the best way to think about it is to allow teams in your organization to think individually, as you say, a venture fund in the company, but you should treat each company in terms of itself providing a venture fund within the company itself without having separate businesses. So allow each team to a budget so that they can experiment with it. And then you will be able to disrupt the potential competitive disruption. So I think companies that do it well find that they are able to compete much better, they're able to grow better. And I think that's a good way of keeping disruptive competition at bay.
In Larsen & Toubro's case, how much smarter can you get? Because, competition is really driving a lot of the changes. And in India, the other thing is if something works, there's always somebody to cut the cost.
No, actually, I'll tell you a simile. A worker productivity may be you can increase 6 times, 7 times, like that. There's some finite number. But as productivity of an engineer or an office guy, you can increase infinite times. Because it's a combination of the tools, the combination of the competence you have of the person, the combination of a sort of a teamwork, and also the excitement of a challenging end objective. So I think the tools are available to everybody. If you have the money, you can buy the tool. But the extent to which you can exploit that tool, whether it's a software, whether it is virtual reality, you think of it before others. I mean, you may have thought of 3D engineering before others. Now you may think of virtual reality before others. And the excitement of, playing with it at a higher level. So you have to keep doing it because everywhere everybody wants more for less.
I was looking at the Accenture 2014 Outlook, Avinash, and what was interesting is that digital is a very big theme. How do you see digital? And, Mr. Venkatraman, all the panelists have spoken about it. How do you see that being a disruptor, really?
I think, digital is such a big word today, and a lot of people don't understand it. I think let me try to make it a little bit simple. If you look at it for a couple of years at least, we have been talking about SMAC, social media, mobility, analytics, cloud, for example, right? All of these things, all companies try to find solutions out there to be able to get the best of these individual technologies. Today, you can have all of the stuff, but if you have not integrated all of this into one platform, you are at a very, very significant disadvantage today. So for example, today what's happening is the social media is being used in rural places. I'm sure a lot of you are on Twitter, Facebook, and this is not true of only the metro areas. This is being used in rural areas as well. The proliferation of devices, handheld devices, the tablets, the phones is immense. People are using internet even in the rural areas. So I think that reach is reached in the last mile is gone across, in a country even in like India. And I think, so what the consumer is telling you today, there's a huge amount of data. So if we as a company are were involved in insights, we used to build a business model and kind of roll it out over a course of few months. Today, I think the business model needs to be real time. So in my view, digital is a great tool for companies to be able to leverage it, but at the same time, it also gives an opportunity to your competition to disrupt your business.
I think if you leverage the digital revolution, even in our consumer products business, we set up an ERP system to connect everywhere from our vendors right to our consumers. And the benefits have been tremendous. So for example, now we do not do forecasting. We only do replenishment. It's very much more efficient. We end up working with negative working capital. The negative working capital in our consumer products business is sufficient for our fixed capital also. You don't need any capital for the business. So efficiencies can improve dramatically. Without that, it was very difficult. We have to service millions of retailers. Without digital technology, without an ERP system, it would have been very difficult and it would have continued to be inefficient as it was in the old days. But now the efficiency improves. With a handheld, a salesperson can handle everything extremely well.
So it's allowing you that last mile connectivity, which is the big focus
Tremendous.
area.
And it makes growth in terms of the very large numbers in India very feasible.